Hey, welcome back to my channel where I'm building a RANS S21 airplane. The temperatures the last couple of weeks have been miserably hot. The outside temperature by about noon or 12:30, well over 100 degrees, 104, 105. Yesterday at 11:30 it was 105. It's probably the hottest day of the summer. It's just making building time impossible. I'm leaving the hangar at about noon most days. At about 90, 92 is my tolerance level. That's where the sweat starts dripping down and I just can't focus. So I have not been getting the build time that I want to get in, but as all things seasonal, it'll pass and hopefully cool down shortly. In this section, I get the vertical stabilizer, which includes the rudder attached to the fuselage. I also get the rudder cables attached, the tensions adjusted, and the deflections. The deflection on the rudder and then the deflection on the elevator. There's tolerances that you've got to get it within range. So I get those set, show you the procedures that I did for that. So with that, let's jump in and get going on that vertical stabilizer. My next step is to install the vertical stabilizer onto the plane. And the first step they have is to put on this rubber trim, cut it to fit, and then a little bit of super glue to hold it on. And they also say if the rudder's attached, to remove the rudder horn before attaching. So I'll get those two steps done. Okay, I've got the top two in, and those are the 6As. The bolt there is just in place to kind of hold it in place, and these are 10As on the bottom. And then you're going to put this doubler in there on the bottom too. Again, getting your wrist and hand up in there is really hard. You need someone with small wrists or just risk getting a little blood on your plane. Well, I couldn't figure out how to get that bolt through the hole, so I took the hammer, slid it in behind, and then used the back of it to kind of tap it, because you can't push it in with your finger. It's just too tight of a hole. So I tapped it in with the back of the hammer, and that seemed to work. And now I just need to get the last nut on it with the washer and tighten everything up. So we'll see how that should go pretty well. Okay, then it says to reattach the rudder horn, and this is the rudder horn which goes up on that piece that comes through. And I thought I was going to have a tough time with these bolts. That rudder horn is way up back there. I think I've got the camera on it now. Yeah, boy, okay. Little hands again. There's no access other than here, so little hands again. Okay, I've taken a chunk out of my hand. I think the only way I'm going to get that horn on back there is to remove the push-pull tube on the elevator. There's just no room. I've tried and tried, and I think it's going to be easier to remove that. Then I've got some space to work on. So that's my next step. Okay, this one was a pain, but I think I got it. I don't know if you guys, I bought these at Oshkosh, and I think Spruce has got them, but they're washer holders. So I got up in there, I got the washer held, where is it? I can't even see. Got the washer held, got my hand up in there, held the bolt, or the nut. And then I stuck the nut in the end of this with some paper towel on the bottom so the nut was spaced up, reached up there and just got the thread started. And once you get the thread started, then you can get your wrenches up there, but holy mackerel, that's a tough one. So I'll get those tightened down as well as all the other bolts tightened down. And that should get us through the rudder horn and the attachment of the stabilizer. And I forgot to mention, removing that push-pull tube made a huge difference. And that's only one bolt at each end. And what a difference getting my hand up in there without that push-pull tube. That was the ticket. Okay, my hangar neighbor just came over and gave me a hand. And I didn't think this was a two-person job because I didn't know we'd get two people underneath. But we ended up, he came in from the backside. I kind of laid the wrench up in there. He had his arm up in here. Once we got the wrench set, he just held it. And then I just needed one hand in the front to tighten down, so I didn't have to have both arms up in there. And that turned out to be a winner. It was taking me forever to get the wrench set and tighten it. Once he got in there and helped me and held it, we got it done in 5 or 10 minutes. So if you're putting your vertical stab on, it would help to have someone come in from behind and hold the wrench. In hooking up the rudder cables, there's some parts information in section 8, and then I've got a note here to see the text on page 97 and the parts manual in 0807. So that takes me back to here, which talks about the tailwheel connection, and I somehow had to put this all together. Okay, in the tail cone, you've got these two cables that come back for the rudder. In the tail dragger, there are two more cables that go down to the tail wheel, and these are the upper cables that connect to the rudder horn. And as I get under here, I can see my extra cable here. Here's my rudder horn back there. There's a hole in there, and then there's going to be a bolt, a couple washers, and a nut, and it's going to attach to the holes on the rudder horn. Okay, page 103 and 104 gets more into the rudder cable installation, tensions, and attachment. So this is really the text that will match up with getting these rudder cables attached. Okay, this is going to be hard with one hand, but it looked like it's bolt, thin washer, rudder horn, thin washer, cable, thin washer, nut. So that all has to be attached for each one of these cables onto the horn. Is going to be that configuration. Once again, you need little tiny hands to get up here. I used an extended wrench, and then I got these at Oshkosh. They're from Work Pro. These ratchet wrenches, when adjust with an angling head on it, and that enabled me to get up here and where am I going? And angle my head down a little bit, and then ratchet it using this one, because I couldn't get my arm in on the socket under this one, but between the combination I was able to crank that tight, and there's just not a lot of room up there. Okay, back in the rigging section, which for the rudder is on page 154 in my manual, they talk about how to set your cable tensions and then your deflection for your rudder. So it looks like we set the cable tensions first, adjusting the notches and the holes and taking out links in the tail wheel section. So we'll get that done first, then we set the deflection 28 degrees either way. And from other videos I've seen, that means taking that block out, that rudder block, which is way up inside and hard to get at, and trimming the ends so that you get the deflection that you need. So I wasn't looking forward to getting back in there and taking that block out again, but I think that's what's necessary. So we'll start with the cable tensions here and then move on to that deflection adjustment. Okay, to adjust the tension in the rudder cables, I think I got it. The first one says change the mounting hole on the multi-hole tang, which is that bar at the front of the rudder cable. That was easy. And then change the hole in which the multi-hole tang on the forward cable bolts to the rudder pedal assembly. That one's a little more complicated. So let me show you what I did. And then cable tension should be 15 to 20. So what I did up here is this tang, the top one, I moved forward, but in order to get it into this last hole, I loosened up the tension on the rudder return. Then I got it into the last hole. The other tang I think they're talking about is down here, but after I got this one up here, I tightened my retention back up to the bolt in the firewall, and I've got pretty tight table. I'm gonna have to have a measurement. I don't have a measure, but I did feel some of the cables at Oshkosh from the RANS S21s, and I think I'm somewhere around 20 here, 15 or 20, but I do want to double check that. So that's how I sent the tension up here. Then they talk about the tension, then you attach your tail wheel and you adjust the tension here by removing the chain, and I've got it so that it's about a third of the way retracted, but I think I read somewhere that's supposed to be halfway, so I think I need to go another one. But again, when it comes to the tension setting, I read somewhere that that spring should be half taut, but it's not here in this page, so I'm gonna have to search back and make sure I've got that correct. But that's how I set the tension on the cables. Okay, on page 103, in the fuselage section, I did find about final installation after skinning. It says with the tail dragger, route the tailwheel steer cables under the pulleys, blah, 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 blah. Adjust the spring tension after the rudder cables are completely installed, which is where I'm at. Spring tension should be tight with the springs compressed about half of the full amount. Adjust spring tension by removing chain links. Loose steer springs will cause indefinite steering. So this is where I read that the springs, so I need to go a little bit more to get them to the half spring tension. I ran into a little problem, which doesn't seem to be indicated anywhere. When you remove these links to tighten this cable, you got to remember that these cables are on a Y system, where you got one that goes to your tail wheel, one goes to your rudder. Now my upper cables are loose, and there's no way to tighten the uppers independently. There's no additional holes or anything to put them in. So I think the strategy is to get these tightened simultaneously. So I've got to either add a new chain or increase links to get this back, get these set so they're the same, and then tighten the one cable leading up to the front to tighten them both simultaneously. That's the only way I can think about it. I didn't see anyone else have this trouble, but there's no way I can tighten this upper cable now, given that this is now a shorter cable in the bottom. I guess it's just basic geometry, but didn't think that through before I cut the links. That's the directions said to set this, cut these links, and that has to be done in unison. So after cutting too many links out of this chain and realized that it then shortened this, which then loosened up my upper cable, it was hard to find chain links. So I found these stainless steel S-hooks that crimped right in there pretty well and added exactly the length that I needed. So that was my fix for that. The next part is to measure the deflection of the rudder, and it's supposed to be 28 degrees with a tolerance of +3 -0. So it's got to be 28 to 31 is the way I'm reading that. And what I've done is I've set up a piece of paper with my center line here. The full deflection as it's currently is here. So I've measured this angle as 24 degrees on this side, 25 degrees on this side, which means I need to shave some off. I have to do the math. I have to shave some off the block, the stopping block, in order to get to the 28 degrees, because I need more deflection. And certainly with a tail dragger, I want more rather than less. If it's 28 to 31, I would certainly like to make sure I get at least 29 or 30. So that's my goal. So I've got to get in here and get that block back off again. More cut hands. Okay, get that block back off. Okay, I've got my block out, and this is the direction it was facing. And in trying to determine how much do I cut off my block to get the extra 4 degrees, I didn't have a good mathematical solution to it. So I went to the YouTubers, Tony and Derek, and it looks like about 1/8 of an inch is what they used, and they were in about the same situation I am. So I hate to say I don't have a good mathematical formula, but I'm gonna chop 1/8 off and see if that gets me my 28 to 30. Probably not the best way to do it, but it's the way I'm gonna handle it. Okay, cutting off the 1/8 of an inch, my angle went from 24 degrees to 29 degrees. So I added 5 degrees by 1/8 of an inch. The 29 is within the range 28 to 31, so I'm going to leave it at that. But for future builders, 1/8 of an inch off the block gets you about 5 degrees, so be careful, don't overcut. Okay, my next step is the elevator adjustment on the push-pull tube. They give you a tolerance of 33 degrees up, 25 degrees down. And how you do the adjustment here is the push-pull tube has these 2 sleeves that are sliding here by the stop, and you measure the deflection, and then you're going to drill and rivet these sleeves in place after you've met the proper deflection. So I set the elevator to neutral and then pushed it all the way forward to where I hit my cabin heat and parking brake. So that's as far forward unless I come over this way, but that's practically the furthest forward I can go with it. And .24.2, let's call it. And my tolerance in the down is 25 plus or minus 1, so 24.2. So really having my control stick all the way to the panel puts me within tolerance, so I'll move it just a hair back and set the stop right there. I didn't like the way it was pushing my stick up to my panel. So what I did is I adjusted these rod ends. I unattached this and screwed this one in and this one in. So I basically shortened this so the whole neutral position was a little bit further back. Now as I go all the way forward, in my forward position I have, I don't know, a finger's gap between here. And my setting is still the same deflection on the elevator. Okay, that's a good place to stop. Unfortunately, I left my time log at the hangar, so I can't tell you how long that section took. I'll update the time in the next episode. And in the next episode, I take all the wire and hoses and tubes coming out of the wings that are dropped and hanging out in the fuselage. I clean all those up. I attach the wing lights, I attach the pitot tubes, the gas hoses, clean them all up, get it all cleaned out. And that's a nice phase because it starts to get the plane looking like a plane. And we'll get that out shortly. So once again, thanks for watching. And remember, dream it, just build it.